September 28th, 2015, live at Capitol Hill. This is Newsroom Breaking News. House votes on key gun control bill expected to be signed by President tomorrow. Speaker Pelosi touts bill as a major step forwards. The time is 12:15. Some good news came from Capitol Hill today, where the first meaningful piece of legislation involving gun control passed with a 244 to 191 majority led by Democrats and some liberal Republicans. The Firearms and Background Check Act of 2015 was met with some bipartisan support, with all but one Democrat voting for the bill and 19 Republicans voting for it. The FBC Act comes as part of a long string of legislative achievements by the Democratic Party, which recaptured the House in last year's midterm races, an unusual deviation from traditional six-year itch races. The two major shutdowns of 2013 and 2014, lasting a cumulative 34 days, arguably cost the Republicans the House, as well as any chance of taking the Senate and holding both houses of Congress and the presidency, means that passing legislation will be all the much easier thanks to the lack of any significant gridlock. Bipartisanship was non-existent in this bill, said House Minority Leader Eric Cantor. The Democrats are using the same tactics they used to pass Obamacare, and we will not yield in our opposition. The Firearms and Background Check Act will require states to do extensive background checks and mental health checks for ownership of certain types of firearms, and will also include severe punishments for illegally owning certain types of submachine guns. The Senate equivalent passed last week with a 61 to 35 majority, several Republicans notably supporting its passage as well. President Obama is expected to sign the bill into law on September 29th. The president called the passing of the bill long overdue and said that the nation needs to tackle multiple issues at once to resolve the issue of gun violence in America. We need to tackle the mental health issue on one front to make sure everyone is taken care of and those who are dangerous to others cannot receive a gun, and that we also need to work to limit certain types of firearms, including weapons that have no benefit to anyone, including the gun owner and the victims. A previous attempt to pass a similar bill earlier this year failed due to its supporting banning the ownership of weapons of relatives of the mentally ill. But that provision was quickly taken out when it was deemed too unpopular. Speaker Nancy Pelosi called this bill one of the House of Representatives' greatest modern achievements, while Republican critics called it a clear attempt to trample over the Bill of Rights. Vice President Joe Biden reportedly played a major role in an attempt to rally votes in the House and Senate to give the bill a clear majority in both houses. October 5th, 2015. This is CNN Newsroom. Vice President Biden, victor in debate. Handsome Joe uses record against opponents. Poll: Christie, Huntsman most likely to beat Biden in 2016. The time is 10:01 p.m. Vice President Joe Biden came out as the clear victor in tonight's Democratic presidential debate being held in Manchester, New Hampshire, where 6 Democrats met and were moderated by CNN's very own Wolf Blitzer. Unlike the Republican debate last month, the Democratic debate largely consisted of candidates arguing over experience rather than policy. Much to the chagrin of most of the candidates, the vice president clearly came out on top, touting 42 years of experience as a senator and vice president, and in particular his ability to work with Congress to push even Republicans to support legislation. Biden said that I worked with Congress to get the bill, the Firearms and Background Check Act of 2015, passed, using friendships formed from decades of hard work. And damn it, I'm going to get the Blake Report to be the next major issue, and will push this country through great changes. Other candidates gave a lackluster performance, with Governor O'Malley seemingly giving a reiteration of his stump speech. David Paterson, while passionate, unable to rouse the audience, and Howard Dean being the only one who compared to the vice president in any way. Dean going all the way with his demand for the Blake Report to be the center of national attention. The candidates all agreed on virtually every issue, and it all came down to experience. Biden stated that, "I've been in politics since most of you were in high school. I know my way around Washington deadlock more than anyone." The only person who compared in any way to Biden was Dean, who himself performed well for himself, and appears to be poised to win a few votes over with this debate's performance. With Biden being the clear victor, it will only add on to his already good numbers in Iowa and New Hampshire. In Iowa, he leads with 45% of the vote against Martin O'Malley's 32%. In New Hampshire, however, Biden's lead is less massive, only scoring 39% against Howard Dean's 33% in recent polls. The vice president, of course, will have to maintain this momentum for a few more months until the first primaries. And knowing national politics, anything can change in those few months. While President Barack Obama's approval ratings jump up to 45%, Vice President Biden's own approval ratings remain at a steady 53%. Polls also indicate that the only Republicans who can seriously challenge him on a national level are Governors Christie or John Huntsman, who still are behind the Democratic titan by nearly 5 points each. October 10th, 2015. This is CNN Newsroom. Christie storms Iowa and Missouri, tries to win over voters in key primary states. RNC Chair: "We are targeting key leadership seats in 2016. The time is 11:15 a.m. As the Republican candidates march forwards from yet another debate, no candidate seems to have as much of a campaign apparatus as New Jersey Governor Christie, who stormed through Iowa and Missouri today, two key early primary battles. The governor told supporters in Cedar Rapids that, "We need a candidate who can seriously lead this country, not someone like Rand Paul or Scott Brown, who would drag this nation into ruin over policies they and far less than a majority of voters would support." Governor Christie said that he was a good compromise candidate, being a moderate who was able to listen to both conservatives and liberals. Christie also visited the SAC and Fox Nation near Marshalltown, where he addressed the issues brought up by the now famous Blake Report, saying that under Democratic presidents, it is unacceptable that parts of our nation are left ignored. The Blake Report, written by Abigail Blake, a worker for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, outlines her 6 months of investigating the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, which she calls the most overlooked and poorest region of this country. Blake was interviewed by CNN earlier this month, saying that solutions need to be found to resolve issues existing in these reservations, like alcoholism and poverty, but that none of the candidates are providing actual solutions. Blake has since left the Bureau of Indian Affairs and is now working as a social worker in Queens, but she still is actively campaigning against Christie and other Republicans and Democrats over their ignoring the issue. The governor, however, has managed to deflect criticism from Ms. Blake, saying that it is a sad state of affairs when we ignore sections of our population, but we cannot do it at the cost of other sections as well. While most Americans are horrified by the findings of the report, no action has been taken in the 3 months since it was released and spread thanks to social media and outreach from the Bureau. Christie was quick to return to other issues facing the country, particularly foreign policy, where he promised to work with local officials in all 50 states should he be elected, rather than making this a government around one man, like Vice President Biden will and President Obama has. Christie's move to attack the administration rather than his fellow opponents seemed to show his efforts to play himself off as the Republican candidate, as opposed to a candidate for the Republican nomination. Christie is currently ahead of Rand Paul in Iowa by 5 points and Missouri by 6 points, but with a few months left until the first primaries, anything can change. While Rand Paul appears to be the most visible threat to the governor, former Governor Jon Huntsman is also making ground in other key primary states, including New Hampshire, Maine, and Minnesota. October 17th, 2015. This is CNN Newsroom. The anti-Tea Party candidate, Alaska Senator Murkowski, rises in new debate. Kerry, the Union State is a threat to American interests. The time is 3:12 p.m. In the most recent Republican debate, one of the candidates that most American news networks brushed aside as other in the polls seems to have broken out, something that now appears to be increasingly common in this campaign, which has seen numerous rising and falling stars. In this case, however, was Senator Lisa Murkowski, the other woman, fighting for the nomination, who last night in a debate in Concord, New Hampshire, seems to have broken out with her scathing criticism of the Tea Party. Her performance last night went viral on the internet, prompting moderate Republicans to anoint her as the chief anti-Tea Party candidate. I have no interest in fear-mongering or appeasing. I have no interest in scarring or giving up my values for the sake of a vote. I have fought against the Tea Party since its inception, and I intend to fight against it until I die or it dies. The rant by the candidate during her opening statements gained a lot of positive attention for the candidate, taking some steam from Jon Huntsman and Christie, who have both branded themselves as the anti-Tea Party candidate. Murkowski seems to have quickly surpassed Scott Walker, Mary Fallin, and Sam Brownback in most polls since last night, the three having fallen into irrelevance as the date nears for the first primaries in January. Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski entered the race in January, but due to a poor grassroots campaign to get moderates and largely inattention from the party itself, she became a candidate with minor support among Republicans, only pulling ahead in Alaska and Idaho. Now, though, her poll numbers have jumped up substantially, increasing in New Hampshire and Iowa as she continues to campaign as a pro-choice, pro-marriage equality Republican. CNN is now prepared to move Murkowski onto the actual polling boards themselves, and her gain easily puts her in a close fourth place, trailing just behind Jon Huntsman and Christie, who now appear to have lost their momentum with a new candidate fighting for the nomination. What the future holds for Senator Murkowski is unknown, but as she steadily rises up, she might become the anti-Tea Party candidate the Republican Party moderates, liberals, and establishment are looking for. Governor Sean Parnell of Alaska and Senator Susan Collins and former Senator Olympia Snowe of Maine are so far the only nationally recognized politicians to have endorsed her, the later two being over the last few days, likely feeding her growing strength. National Republican tracking poll. Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey, 22%. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, 20%. Former Governor John Huntsman of Utah, 18%. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, 14%. Governor Sam Brownback of Kansas, 7%. Governor Mary Fallin of Oklahoma, 5%. And undecided/other, 14%. October 25th, 2015. This is breaking news. Newsroom. Christie under fire over controversy. New Jersey governor was under Department of Justice investigation. Rand Paul, the Republican from Kentucky, demands full disclosure from governor. The time is 2:22 p.m. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is under fire from opponents today after a former staffer for the Republican governor leaked to the press that the Christie administration was under an investigation from the Department of Justice from November 2013 to July 2014, where they investigated possible corruption within the governor's administration. In particular, is his attempt to cover up a corruption scandal that Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno, who is assumed to be his successor, and allegations of corruption prior to his term as governor. Christie addressed these concerns today when he yelled at a reporter from CNN who asked if the governor was going to disclose any information regarding the scandal. Replied Christie, "It's none of your business." Christie's response went viral, with opponents almost immediately calling him out on his telling a reporter to leave him alone. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul spoke in Iowa, saying that it should be the voters' business if you are running for president. Paul demanded that Christie release the information, along with other candidates like John Huntsman and Lisa Murkowski, who are themselves seeking to unseat Christie from his frontrunner status. Governor Christie addressed these concerns during an interview on the radio just after Paul demanded he release the documents, stating that, "I won't release the documents because it will only drag Lieutenant Governor Guadagno's name through the dirt on allegations that were proven false." Despite this, his support appears to already be dwindling, with former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, one of Christie's most vocal supporters in the Northeast, already polling his endorsement for the governor. What effect this has at the polls has yet to be seen. But as this scandal expands, we'll likely see how it can change the Republican primaries. November 15th, 2015. This is CNN Newsroom. Vice President Biden in Manchester. VP leads Democratic PAC by double digits. President Obama hits ground in Iowa to campaign for Biden. The time is 3:45 p.m. With Vice President Biden making his first major campaign appearance in New Hampshire this month, new polls have been released indicating that the vice president's poll numbers have increased in the Granite State by double digits, allowing him not only to push away former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley to a distant second, but also now seeing a majority in polls supporting him. At the current rally in Manchester moments ago, the vice president commented on his lead by saying that we need to continue the strides this administration began 8 years ago. Our work in healthcare is not complete. Our work in Africa is not complete. And our work for the basic civil rights of all Americans is not complete. Biden has, throughout his campaign, stated that the only way to fix the country is to continue what Barack Obama began 8 years ago, and that pulling the plug, like what so many Republicans want, will only bring chaos to this nation. The vice president has vowed to stick to a largely domestic agenda, and while Africa has been a point of contention in recent years in American foreign policy, he stated that the only foreign policy goals will be to end the war on terror. With 55% of New Hampshire's Democrats now supporting him in the polls, and 44% of Iowans as well, it appears that as of now, the vice president is the presumptive nominee unless one of the other Democrats can pull an upset in one of the coming debates, with President Obama unofficially endorsing the vice president and traveling across Iowa calling for the work to continue. It only seems more and more likely that Biden will be the Democratic nominee in 2016. While there has been some last-minute talks of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton entering the primaries through a write-in campaign, it seems that she is also going to back the vice president, with rumors indicating that she is planning her endorsement after the New Hampshire and Iowa primaries. While a Hillary Clinton endorsement would certainly guarantee that Biden will get the Democratic nominee and likely the presidency as well, according to current polls, anything can happen between now and January, and certainly between now and next November, when millions of Americans will vote for their 45th president.